having worked in utilities, you cannot imagine how difficult it is to interconnect with the transmission line. We were building solar plants. I built solar plants of PG&E. It took me 9 months to connect a small 2 megawatt plant to a distribution grid. Just imagine how tough it is to connect it to transmission grid. And with all these renewables coming online, utilities would have to spend money to build the transmission infrastructure. So what are my choices? I spend money, build the transmission infrastructure, increase the rates for the consumers, or I save money for the consumers by doing energy efficiency. You would see more and more utilities. The pace might be slower, but they would go down this path.
Well, that was very insightful. Steve, what do you have to say about it?
Well, I mean, certainly the transmission lines are a big part of that. I was reading an interesting article recently about transmission lines themselves, as well as the equipment supporting that being outfitted with sensors and instrumentation. So this notion of having big data based entirely just off of smart meters, excuse me, that's just the beginning. And as the entire grid becomes instrumented, that level of data consumption is going to continue to grow exponentially. If you look at some examples where, data centers, for example, trying to drive down the proper utilization for that to save money can be, make big business, a big dent in big business profits. So certainly efficiencies are a big part of that. I think this is, at a personal level, partially on the pendulum, where we're going to tune this to a point where we might start to even break it, and it'll start to swing back the other way at a certain point in time, and we'll find that medium. There's also some interesting, just going off script for a moment, how many of you know about Lawrence Livermore here in the Bay Area? Right? How many of you know what their coolest project going is right now?
Fusion.
There you go. It's fusion, right? So by the end of this year, if they stick to the program, the world's first fusion experiment will come online. Right? So what does that mean for the next couple of years? It means absolutely nothing, right? That's a long-term project. But if you start looking 10, 20, 30 years into the future, if these guys are successful, and the early tests have shown they're going to be successful, this notion of having natural gas-generated electricity, coal-generated electricity, all that's going to go away. Right? We're going to be able to actually harness the thermonuclear power of stars to generate electricity. And I don't know about you, but that's cool. And so what I see happening here is a convergence of computing and essentially thermonuclear fusion coming online over the course of the next couple of generations, where electricity becomes cheap, which drives economies, and based on the economic world we live in now, we need all the help we can get to do that. And big data is going to play a role in that, because the amount of information coming off of those systems is just going to be impossible to manage using traditional systems. So I think it's going to completely change the economic paradigm if it's successful. If it's not, then we'll continue to tune the heck out of this stuff and figure out how we can, make wind turbines generate more. But it'll be a fascinating field to watch, and certainly be involved with that.
Well, thanks, Steve. Well, I think we're getting a very diverse view over here. That the data is not only about the utilities. Data is not only about the transmission and generation and distribution. The data is all about multiple different new technologies. And I have a question for our VCs and the startup company, Elsa, for you. It is not one single technology. I mean, I have pictures over here, the windmill, the solar, and Jeremy was talking about the EV charging, and the grid might be collapsing if all of us have the electric cars. And there's no water, and there's an interesting picture of a distribution plant in India. And all of it, we try to generate data out of it, what failed over here, that will be a huge problem. You can look back and see the picture over there. Anyways, I'll show you the picture later on. So, what do you guys think in the VC community, beyond this data generation, and Richard, I was trying to ask that question earlier, what are the opportunities in data and big data beyond the energy sector?
I'm not sure I'm getting your lead there, but there are huge amounts of opportunities with data, and even within the energy sector, you can look at all different sectors. In solar, we're investors in Enphase, and Enphase is a microinverter that goes on residential solar panels, And every one of those microinverters is collecting data and telling you how that panel is performing, and it has radio communication, well, power line, a form of power line communication to get that information out so that you can see what's really going on your rooftop. We're involved in a company in the wind sector that's really trying to look out and see wind as it's coming. It has to crunch quite a bit of data in order to build a map of the wave of air coming at a turbine, so that the turbine can change the pitch of its blades in order to capture more energy and generate energy. And you could go on and on. And we have a company that works with IBM in their Smart Cities program that is capturing real-time parking data and providing that to consumers on a smartphone. It's also providing it to cities and law enforcement officers and other people, but crunching a huge amount of data, what's going on in the environment. If you need to find a parking spot, instead of driving around town for 20 minutes, look it up and look at those data feeds. We have a company I mentioned earlier that provides a thermostat. It's actually, they don't really provide the thermostat, but any communicating thermostat, they pull the information off of that, they crunch, they actually track that information for a couple weeks and build a whole energy model of the home that it's in for residential use. And then in the background, without the consumer, the homeowner doing anything, it figures out the optimal way to hit the temperature set points and providing a service. So I could go on and on. Just about any area you can think of, there are huge amounts of uses for data, whether it's consumer uses for improving efficiency and for managing your grid that the utilities get the benefit of, for just making life more convenient, more comfortable as a consumer. So across the board, there's just a never-ending list of what can be done with the amount of data, and the data is coming from not just the smart grid, but in the case of parking, or in the case of there's a cool company, INRIX, that we're not involved with, but it's providing huge amounts of data from people's smartphones as they're driving that gives you congestion data and lets you know what's going on the highways. And so that's a pure consumer app where sharing everybody's data and crunching it and giving you something useful. At the end of the day, though, what matters is what kind of value can you get out of it. And there's just an unending supply of opportunities there.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Victor. Ramesh, what's your perspective?
Yeah, actually, I share Victor's perspective. I mean, it is such an open question, and I could sit here and talk to you all day about so many companies that we've seen. So let me follow Victor's lead and give you some more interesting examples of data. One of our portfolio companies is Liquid Robotics. You guys can go check it out. So what they did is they came up with what is called a wave glider. It powers itself using tidal energy. It looks like a surfboard, but it's got a tie cord, and it's like an amalgamation of two devices that power this wave glider forward or whatever on the ocean. Initially, the company wanted to just follow whales using this technology, right? But then they realized that, okay, let's slap on a panel of solar cells on it that's going to power payloads, which could be sensors that you have, right? Then let's put on a communications device to satellites so that it can send you data on water samples, it can send you data on water currents. And the funny thing is, just one sliver of this data results in so much savings. So for example, these gliders were sent out from Hawaii to Hong Kong. And they figured out that there are certain water currents or pathways, if you will, where the water is flowing at an average of 4 knots higher in speed. So this data was used by some companies to route their shipping lanes to capitalize on those currents, and the savings in fuel that you got in one day repaid the cost of the entire technology platform, just one day. So the ROI, the IRR, you do whatever calculations you want. I mean, so this is one example of how you could, following Victor's case, think of data. Another example is water usage, because I see a water tap. We came across this company. It's an interesting company. What it does is, it has sensors. These sensors sense properties of the soil. So it does a chemical analysis of the soil on the fly.
And then what it does is it gets weather information to figure out what the rainfall is going to be that day. And it optimizes the amount of water that's used to feed crops. Very interesting use of data, very applicable to industrial sized farms which spend a lot of water on this. And very important to countries where fresh water is scarce. It's not really applicable maybe to the US. You have lots of farming subsidies, but look globally again. So again, what I wanted to, I'll stop myself with the examples there and make one final point to entrepreneurs. When you look at, we come across many business plans like this which are very interesting. But look, you have consumers, you have utilities coming back to the smart grid, and then you have regulatory bodies. So when you think about your business plan, think more holistically. There should be value creation to every party in this chain. You cannot alienate any one party completely and have a successful business plan. So think really broadly about data. There are many applications, and when you think about monetizing it, look at the entire value chain and make sure that everybody sees an ROI. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Ramesh. So what do you have to say about opportunities beyond the preventive maintenance on the appliances?
I think kind of what's a lot of what people are investment and VCs and companies are looking at companies that are really into data analytics, right? How to also make energy sexy, so actually engage that customer. That customer engagement has been a big question for utilities and service providers of how to make it interesting and sexy for consumers as well as commercial business owners to figure out how to use that information. So there's a lot of opportunities for entrepreneur and companies to figure out how to make that happen. At the flip side, I think definitely also utilities are trying to figure out, well, what programs, demand response programs, can I do in terms of load shed events that give us the biggest bang for our buck kind of thing, and figure out all of their customer demographics and what programs they really should roll out at what time, and really make them understand, because they're not marketing people, and they're just trying to start learning to be marketing people, and the data that they're collecting will allow them to figure out and provide suggestions, say, perhaps, tomorrow it's going to be really hot, you may want to, start creating a load shed event because 40% of your customers are connected to a pool pump, so you can actually turn them off and automatically. So even providing analytics and information, just as we're providing information to engage that customer, the utility also needs these types of software, and we see that a lot of investments are going into both sides to help both of the opportunities in both markets.
Thank you. I think these are all small, the smart ideas that can become big, and that is the way most of the venture model works. But I think the big company, as Steve was talking about, the entry point is $100 million revenue. And if that is a starting point, I think it might be a good idea for us to understand the perspective on how the big companies, the IBM, the Oracles, the SAP, how do you guys see the market in the energy sector country-wise? Every country has different needs. IBM, SAP, Oracle, they have different offices. Where do you guys see the opportunity of creating programmable platforms to solve these problems? What direction are you guys working in? Where do you see the big companies going?
So from IBM's point of view, we're attacking what we call GMUs. So it's we like lots of three-letter acronyms, of course, hence the name of the company. But GMUs are growth market units. Anyway, we use them so ubiquitously we forget what they stand for sometimes. And that primarily means we're taking our technologies, but instead of investing as heavily as we used to in North America and the more mature marketplaces, we're spending a lot of time in countries like India and China, down in Latin America as a whole. As I've gone down to Brazil a few times as an example, working on some smarter city stuff. We're also partnering up with some very interesting instrumentation companies. So without instrumentation, the whole basic premise of Smarter Planet doesn't work. So as an example, we have an RFID partner, and this particular company developed their passive tag technology based on their work with NASA and communicating with Deep Space Probes. So for those of you who have heard of them, Mojix is the name of the partner that we work with. And they recently won a very large contract with BP and a few of the other major oil companies out in the North Atlantic, where they're drilling, they're setting up drilling operations. And instead of putting rigs in place that they have historically, these rigs are being built from the ground up to be incredibly instrumented. Right? So big data is being brought into that to not only start to help them better manage the workers and prevent disasters like what happened in the Gulf of Mexico, but looking at how we can help them fine-tune their consumption of energy, the operations of that, and then return profitability back to them at a faster rate given the multi-billion-dollar investments they're putting in for that operation. Other areas, down in Rio as part of Smarter Cities, where IBM's spending a lot of time. Our CEOs were down there. We just had a switch here at the beginning of the year of 2012, for those of you who pay attention to our executives. And so Sam Palmisano retired, Ginny Rometty came on board, and they were both down there during that transition and getting a key to the city as we help them prepare for the next Olympics and the World Cup and a few of the other high-profile activities that they have going on. So we're helping them with transportation, with energy consumption, making sure that they don't have power blackouts, helping them with crime and theft. We have some analytic technologies that I'm involved with around being able to look at different bits of essentially puzzle data and figure out new patterns and insights that weren't detectable before, things that can be used to help solve crimes or look for illegal activities with counterfeiting. That same technology is being used in Singapore and in shipping ports to look for essentially thieves that are out there trying to take advantage of illicit cargo or potentially even take the ship itself in a few extraordinary cases. So it's a global opportunity. IBM continues to invest more and more heavily around the world. It's not just a North American company like its heritage was, of course, and that's where most of our profits and opportunities are at this point.
Well, thank you. Let's look at a perspective from a startup company perspective, Prateek. How would a big companies like Oracle, SAP, or IBM, they could be a bigger supporter of what the startup companies work is being done, and what would you like them to be going? Which direction would you like them to be going?
Make our lives easier by helping us interact with utilities. So let me elaborate on this. There are two kinds of markets, two kinds of market opportunities in big data, and folks have shared a number of different examples. I look at it in this way. You have advanced markets. I spent 5 years drilling oil and gas wells. I would say oil and gas is an advanced market. You have the players well established. They know what they're doing. Incentives are aligned. There is a big opportunity for data analytics. You have providers going in and doing that. There are emerging markets, a nascent market, and we talked about why utilities are a nascent market. Utilities are facing this challenge of managing data, but they don't know how to do it. And the one player who's best positioned to influence this is the utility. They get all the data, they talk to the regulators, they own the customer relationship. I see a different world 5 or 10 years down the road. I expect companies like IBM's, like Oracle's, like SAP's to take the ownership, take the lead in this space. I won't be surprised, and a number of PUCs are already pushing the utilities to do this. Why don't utilities outsource your demand-side functions? You're not good at managing data. You're not good at managing retail relationships. What you're good at is managing the grid. So manage your grid. You still own the customer relationships, but invite folks like IBM's, Oracle's, and other retail players, maybe Macy's. There is a utility and retail partnership in the UK where a local utility has outsourced the demand-side function to the local retailer who manage customer relationships much better. So I see companies like IBM and Oracle bringing in their data expertise, partnering with the right retail folks, and creating this platform, a one-stop shop. Utilities love one-stop shop. Give me one solution. Now, once you have that platform, which is, let's say, managed by you guys, it becomes much easier for us. Instead of trying to convince utilities of how novel our analytics approach is, how cool our bill itemization is, and them not getting it directly because they don't have the DNA, it's much easier to convince IBM and Oracle and others who live and breathe this technology. So my hope is we get into a world where these guys help the utilities embrace all the data and analytics innovation we're working on.
Well, that's very well said, and I think who would know it better than Jeremy? What does an outsourcing of data and data management means to the utilities?
Yeah, well, we see virtually every deal that we go into, we see, you know, many, if not all of these logos. And I think the thing that's interesting from our perspective is that, you know, there are aspects of these engagements where we are cooperating with each other. There are aspects where we're competing with each other. And the thing that I'm hoping for is that we come up with a consensus way of doing things. Right now, I mentioned the meter data management system earlier. A meter data management system is a funny thing from my perspective. We've got smart meters that are networked two-way that are capable of being read in real time. But the way most smart grids work is those smart meters are read several times a day. That the data from those data reads is exported once or twice a day from the head-end system that read them into a meter data management system where it's converted into a bill. Well, this just seems completely wasteful to me. I don't know why we have meter data management systems, frankly. I'm happy to argue that point with anyone. But I think that we've gotten far enough in this technology that that we should be able to read meters in real time and generate bills in real time. And it actually makes me sad to think that we're all chasing after, you know, whose platform is going to own the data, and not get about the business of actually doing stuff with that data. So I think that's my candid.
That's an interesting point, and I think doing a roadmap from an entrepreneur's perspective for big companies that helps the smaller companies. That's the perspective I was trying to get. But I think in the interest of time, I want to be having a little bit more time for the question and answers to the panel. I would like to jump on to my last question for the panel. I would like to go question for everybody over here. You all have been working in this area for a couple of years. And if you have to do it all over again, and you have to give an advice on what are the big opportunities, and if you were to do what you're doing all over again, what would you do differently? Pratik, let me start with you.
I love what I'm doing, so I'm not going to change that. And no kidding, I think itemizing utility bills is a big, big opportunity. Helping consumers get the insights and helping them become a part, as Elsa was saying, make energy sexy for the residential consumers, get them excited. That aside, a couple of areas which I think has immense opportunity from a data perspective. We all know about energy storage and how energy storage is the holy grail. The industry is focused big time on looking at the right technologies. What I would add is having a smart data analytics layer is also important. How can a storage solve the demand response challenges that the utilities have? When can you and where can you plug a storage solution is absolutely important. I am closely following this industry and I would love to see the industry come up with a holy grail solution. Secondly, I think Ramesh or Elsa touched upon this, operational efficiencies. We all go for the sexy thing and trying to influence the consumer, but we forget that utilities do have an operations to run. How can they use data to enhance their operational efficiencies? And I'll share an example with you. Utilities typically get about 30 to 40,000 high bill dispute calls from customers. And roughly 80% of them get escalated to the top tier team, which involves driving a truck, the customer's premises, checking the meter, trying to convince the customer that everything is okay. The only thing the customer can see is the whole house data. There's no other insights. Just imagine an itemized bill. Now, instead of driving the truck, you can sit in your office, look at the screen, You can know what your top appliances are doing. You can compare that to your previous month and your previous year. So you're saving millions of dollars for the utilities. It's not sexy. It's more from a business enterprise application, but a number of companies should be targeting this.
Well, I think what I've seen in this industry is that I basically see three waves. The first wave is get me the data, and that's what drove the investments into building out networks and getting this infrastructure in place so that we can actually get at the data. I think everyone realizes that there's important stuff to this. Number two then becomes about the insights, and insights to me, and that's I think where a lot of people when they think about analytics, they're going after these insights. But from my perspective, that's just not good enough. What an insight is to me is that someone came up with something clever, they made a report, and someone looks at that report and decides that we might do something about this at some point. Let me give you an example. We have, so meter readers are not the only feet on the street. The guys out there going and doing bill dispute resolution are not the only feet on the street. They're actually a huge expense of the utility industry is actually managing vegetation. So when you leave here tonight, go look at the overhead power lines and look at all the trees that are touching those lines. In some cases, particularly in heavy wind, those can cause power outages, sometimes momentary, sometimes longer lasting than that. They can also cause problems with the equipment, so the 20-year lifespan of a 45-year-old transformer might get dramatically shortened by that as well. So what we have is we have utilities driving around trucks looking at trees and trying to figure out which ones are the problems. So we can pull that data back and we can analyze it. This is sort of what I would call the collect and analyze paradigm. And the collect and analyze paradigm is all about getting the data, getting some smart data scientists to look at it and then figure out, okay, well, what are we going to do with this, right? And well, think about that. That tree problem is not going to go away. So you got to collect and analyze and collect and analyze and collect and analyze, and you got someone that's looking at this all the time. So how do you actually operationalize this? And what's the most efficient way to deal with this? We didn't build the internet off of, for instance, Google did not pull back the entire internet, put it in a database, and then let you do queries on it. They index the internet. They constantly do that. It's massively distributed. It's not collect and analyze. So my perspective is we're going to connect to the data. We're actually going to push the platform. It's not about disks and Hadoop clusters and all in some big data center and all these disks whirring around. It's actually about pushing these insights back out into the network and letting the network take action. So turn those insights into action. So again, we find the right algorithm that can detect these trees causing problems, causing voltage sags, voltage swells, power outages, right? Why not push that out to the edge? We know that when a meter moves, that someone's probably doing something bad. Because meters don't generally move, right? So rather than collecting that data and analyzing it offline and saying, you know what, someone probably moved a meter. There might be something criminal happening here, right? Why don't we just alert on that, right? And there are example after example of this kind of thing, where you get sags and swell events. You couple that with, we're talking about variety of data. Couple that with weather data, and a transformer is a big bucket full of oil. If the oil in that big bucket full of oil evaporates, then that transformer is not going to last as long. So you can predict when things are going to fail. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do. Why not alert on that from the network? Why not let the network talk to other elements of the network to make decisions, rather than pulling it all back, putting it in another database, right? We have an opportunity here to really connect this data and let machine-to-machine data actually work for machines, rather than having machine-to-machine data pull back, have a human being look at it, and just create more jobs looking at reports. So.
Great. And you guys have reached a maturity level of your fund, the
I'd be much more cautious about utilities. Actually, the 5-year piece of that changes the perspective a lot. So I agree with what Jeremy says. You know, the evolution that we'll see going forward on the grid is, first, infrastructure needs to be put in place where you can get data. Once you can start collecting data, then you can look at analytics and help inform decisions people are making today without data. And so now they can make better decisions, they can make more decisions, maybe fewer people can be put to work making those decisions. And this is going to take time, and really getting that infrastructure in place is a job for the IBMs more so than for little startups that don't have the capital base or the time to just sit around and wait while utilities figure out what they want to do, go to the regulatory body, the PUC, and get approval, and then come back and put together a plan and a big team. So the time scales is long. Once you get the analytics, then the next logical step is to maybe add some control into your network. Electricity flows downhill for the most part right now, but if a power line goes down or a transformer blows up, why can't you actively reroute power so that the houses, the businesses on that part of the transmission network don't go down? That would be the next step, and then you can start talking about proactive applications that make life better for everybody. But this is probably decades in the making. So when I come back to thinking about startups, we have a lot of utility relationships, and we partner with them, and we really try to make that work. But one thing we have learned is, if you can avoid the utility, if you can get around the utility, then as a startup, you want to do that. And if one day you can come back and really help the utility adds scale to your business. They can really scale you up fast if you can survive the 10 years or whatever it takes to get to that point. So finding those applications where you're solving a pain point, and in the energy sector, it is so big, and it is in some cases so fragmented that another important lesson is find something that you can solve either directly or with a clear partner. Partners sometimes can both help and get in the way. So you got to be careful about if you're going at it with a partner. But in some cases, a partner is the best way. But it's got to be very clear, very targeted to get in and get your business going, and preferably generate cash. That's one of the big lessons. And then from there, if you can grow, great. And if by solving that point problem, you're starting to put infrastructure in place that provides data that can be used for other things, great. And over time, you can expand that. But that's, I'd say, one of the big lessons is, avoid the utilities and solve a specific problem. And consumers adopt rapidly. You think about even solar energy. Utilities should be the one deploying rooftop solar, but they're not. They might get pulled into it one day, but it's the residential consumer that's putting it up, making it happen, affecting the grid, creating the headaches, and then changing the mindset of utilities. So as a startup, look for those opportunities where you can get right in.
So I think I agree with everything Victor said, especially when it comes to market timing. I think we all agree that there's a lot of money to be made. Everybody realizes the importance of innovation, especially in the grid side. But 1 year in the life of a startup could be a killer for the startup, right? Which is where big companies can probably weather the long sales cycle and the infinite pilots you have to go through with utilities. But having said that, this is just following up on what Victor said, but for the entrepreneurs, right? I would first look at the business plan, and as I said, you have consumers, you have utilities, you have regulatory bodies. Let me take DR as an example. So it was very interesting. We have a company which does DR in the commercial and industrial space. So you would think that it's a very easy sell to consumers, right? Hey, participate in our DR event, you get like a revenue share with us. Great, right? It should be very easy. Now, DR is okay because, if the industrial load provider signs up for a load and you never call it and they get paid, very easy solution. But try selling frequency regulation to them. You go tell a furnace operator, I want control of your furnace and I'm going to keep switching the temperature by 2 degrees like 10 times a day for frequency regulation because we can make a lot more money, he'll say, screw you, I'm not giving you control of my appliances because my job's on the line. So the first thing is, it's not very easy, and I had to go with the sales team of a startup to realize this, that, you know, the sale to the consumer is not very easy. That's where you need a very good management team. You know, you need to have people who have experience selling to these verticals and who can go sell not only top down but bottom up. So you got the consumer locked in now. Think about the utility, right? What does a utility want? If you don't have, as an example, going to communications, because that was mentioned, if you don't have an ability to verify that, you know, I requested a DR event to happen as a utility, but I got back verification from the load provider that indeed things that were requested did happen, so there's two-way verification going on. It's no value to the utility because the utility would have to maintain its reserve anyway, and this is another problem, right? And then the thing is, the utility owns the NOC, the Network Operating Center. So now what the utility is going to do is run a levelized cost of creating that 1 megawatt of power through DR versus turning on the peaker for a short time or buying electricity in the open market. And what I want to warn startup companies is, do all these calculations and analysis a priori just on PowerPoint and Excel. Make sure that the value proposition that you offer is extremely clear to everybody. And also think about things that come along this way. Let's say the consumer realizes that the consumer is providing load, without that your company is useless, you have nothing to sell. They're going to go and tell you, instead of an 80-20 revenue share, why not make it 20-80, right? What would you do then, right? And then think about the regulatory nature of the problem as well. What is it that you need to be compliant? How do you do things? So as long as you do this, I don't see any reason why you need to go around anybody, or you know, you can go with the utility, you can go around the utility. I mean, it's completely up to you. I just think that the value proposition has to be extremely clear. And it should also be subjected to stress tests. Like, if you think you're going to be cash flow positive in 3 years, imagine what would happen if it took you 4 years, because you only get pilots, right? What would you do as a startup to make sure that you know, you can handle adverse events that are bound to happen? As long as this is clear, I think you know, there's a lot of room for opportunity and success.
Yes, Ramesh.
Would I do anything different? I enjoy what I do. We have identified a niche in terms of a gap in the marketplace for utilities that we offer that nobody else offers today. And when we first started, we knew that we were ahead of our time. Okay, we knew that the utilities was going to take time. And we watched every competitor take venture money, and we basically said, okay, we understand there's a problem we're trying to solve. Utilities have told me that, yes, this is a problem, but they don't have time right now to look at this problem. And so know your customers and where they are, okay, and how early you are in the marketplace. And from that, we made strategically decisions on what we were going to do financially to continue to reach where the time the market was ready to look at what we were trying to solve. And so fortunately, you know, after 3 years, utilities are now coming back and saying, we're ready to look at what you're trying to solve. However, you know, looking back also, there, you know, with all this data, you know, I'm always excited about other potential markets beyond utilities. And what really excites me is this whole pre-maintenance with contractors, because it's changing the way we sell warranties in terms of appliances. It's changing how we're engaging customers. We have lights on a dashboard, so you know, I don't know how a car works, but I know when my lights are out. I know when I need to bring my car to service. I don't know that about my appliances. I don't know how many of you know that you need to flush out your hot water heater once a year. Apparently you're supposed to do it. I had a big lesson on that from the hot water heater company. But working with different market segments and talking to them, there's huge opportunities to mine the data that we're giving them, to change business models. Contractors want to have a relationships with the consumers. They want your business and continue business. It's like your dentist where they send you a postcard and say, you know, it's been 6 months, you should come back. They want to have that service opportunity so before something breaks, they're there to service you. They want to build that long-term relationship so they have that clientele. And so that was very interesting to me, but there's so many other opportunities in terms of beyond just utilities. And also what I've learned is, like, obviously don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread your risk mitigation, right? So it is trying different things, but don't spread yourself too thin. But really understand your customers, what you're trying to solve, and creating that, knowing what value you're adding to that value chain is very key to, what I would focus on. Next slide.
So from IBM's point of view, strategy is handled by lots of people. So it's hard to say what we would do differently over the last few years. There were a few examples of entering certain markets too quickly. At a personal level, I've been heavily involved in trying to build out the Internet of Things. For those of you who have heard that, we got into that game a little too early. So we'll watch that slowly mature and continue to invest in that one. For those of you who are interested in basically how RFID becomes pervasive in our lives. As far as the next 5 years and what's exciting about that, enterprise software is a very different beast from retail. We're all using smartphones now. We're accustomed to the App Store. So Apple gave us this new medium to buy essentially invisible pieces of software that historically we didn't even know we needed. Enterprise software is starting to go down that road, but with a twist. Big Insights, as an example, has this notion of an app store. And historically, that is just not part of the paradigm that we work under. So if you're looking at starting businesses and you want to get involved in this type of space, I would recommend doing some homework around how do you build application-specific, and the keyword there being application-specific, software companies that can take advantage of the large platforms being produced by the IBMs of the world and get into their app store. So that enterprises, instead of having to spend millions of dollars to do one particular thing and maybe not even do it very well, can now do it well out of the box by plugging in and taking advantage of the application you've written. An example of what we've already done at the Silicon Valley Lab is we're writing 3 of those applications out of the box today, right? So it's a lot of the bread and butter stuff you hear in big data that's typically industry agnostic. So log analytics, helping the IT shop go in and manage their solutions better so that they can figure out in real time or near real time why their complex systems are failing. But that's just one example, right? So, IBM and companies like IBM, we go after the broad opportunity, but when it comes to the niche play, we're not going to build that because we're not good at it. We don't scale that well. So we're going to do a couple of things in that business. We're going to go partner with that, or we're going to acquire that business, right? And we are starting to acquire businesses more and more that are in the niche space. And we take that technology, we bring it into the platform, and we grow it. We have, as you may be aware, I think a $10 billion publicly stated number around our acquisition budget over the next few years. Right? That's a clear strategy. There's no ambiguity there. We are going to buy our way into success with software because it's easier. And several years back, I had the fortune of sitting in a meeting for a couple hours with our CEO. The CEO made it very clear, right? We bet on the winning horse. We buy the winning horse. We don't go try and build them very often ourselves. Big data is an exception because the opportunity is so large. Right, so we're building Big Insights from the ground up. The first release of that product went out about a year ago. We're getting ready to release 2.0 here next month. If you're reading any literature from IBM, it talks about big data. If you even go to IBM.com/big data, boom, we have a whole set of homepages dedicated to it. Most products don't have that privilege. But the App Store is going to be, I'd say, something that becomes more pervasive inside of enterprises. It'll just be different than retail. You're not going to get it off your smartphone. You're going to get it through, consoles that are inside of your application servers, and there's going to be a bigger budget associated with it, but it's going to be a lot cheaper than if you built it by yourself. And then the dynamics with that IBM has, as you probably know, a services arm, so we have GDS, and they're out there usually doing first contact with a lot of the customers. Then they work with the hardware side of the business and the software side of the business in order to drive opportunities forward, but they're not, even though they're part of the same company, they're not married to IBM. They'll go out and work with other system integrators and partners in order to get business done if that's required. So getting to know the services side of the business and being there to act as contractors and support particular verticals and having those relationships is another way to get involved. But that ecosystem is a very vibrant ecosystem. It's going to continue to grow, and investments around big data there should be very successful. As long as it's growing faster than GDP and those KGARs are looking as good as they are with double-digit numbers, this is a space that IBM will spend a lot of time in.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much. And what I personally learned, from this, thank you for your sharing your experience and knowledge base with us. And what I learned from here is that there is an opportunity for the utility side and the consumer side, for the app side and the big platform side. So big data in utility, in clean tech, in energy sector is a huge opportunity for everybody. We got to be making sure what value proposition do we want to be bringing in, what time to money we are chasing onto, and what is our end goal. So with that, we have 20 minutes left in this, and I would like to throw this session open to question and answers. We have time for a few questions.
This is primarily for Elsa and the gentleman from IBM. Could you comment on what the opportunities that big data will enable in the grid for the so-called advantages of the smart grid, which means technologies like islanding or microgrids that island and go off the main grid, and possibly distributed generation, feed-in tariffs, and so on and so forth.
That's a big question. I need to think about that one for a second, if that's okay. My specialty has been big data on the software side, so getting into the specifics on essentially segmenting down the markets the way you're describing, certainly from a billing point of view, I think you have you can better manage the domains. From an IBM Smarter Planet point of view, if you will, the notion of smarter buildings is something we're very involved with, which gets into having just a lot more efficient operations of how you're managing your facilities and the utilization behind that. But I don't know if that's answering your question precisely. Do you have anything you want to add? It's a tough one.
Let me try adding something over here. Having worked for SunPower and in the energy sector for a while, the big data, I think the biggest problem in the island and the microgrid is the variability in the power generation. And as one of the panel members was talking about, really gathering data on a 15-minute basis on a parcel level, you're talking about that issue. In a windmill, if you can gather data on a parcel level where what the climatic conditions are, you probably can forecast how much of diesel generator, the combination of diesel generator, the windmill or the solar energy or the battery storage or all these things can be sized to provide a stable power in microgrids. So it all depends on how much of data we can generate on weather forecasting and how much can we analyze it. If that answers a part of your questions. You have a question?
Wait, hold on.
I was recently reading something that I thought was pretty cool. This is about big data and clean technology. They're talking about clean web. Basically, you use the web to generate information to make the world cleaner. So I don't know if you guys heard about it. But the other question I have, I heard of the concept of negative watts. So it should be just worth as much. People should be paying that as much as energy generated. Just curious about.
So actually the concept of negawatts came in because demand response became a necessity, and in fact it's not something that we in the VC world created. This is a word that's been created by FERC, and it's priced. So utilities for participating in DR programs actually get paid for the energy reduction in a regulatory fashion. They get paid as if it were a generation source. So you are right, 1 megawatt is like producing 1 watt.
And I was curious if we could get ourselves into the situation that we can save a watt during the peak hours, the customer actually gets paid, then I think there's a lot more incentive for all of us get involved to reduce the amount of energy during the peak hours.
No, that's exactly how it works.
Right.
So the way it works is you have companies that that revenue share, right? So let's say I'm the middleman and I am between you, the homeowner, and the utility. And let's say you're willing to give me control of your